Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into the 5th Spring 2024 update from GavsWeatherVids. So here we go again, so we get more spring data and we're up to update number 5 now. How exciting. Just got one more to go next week and they've got a spring forecast in 2 weeks time. So it's been a nice short little season of spring updates this year, hasn't it? But maybe we save the best to last. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments. So this is going to be a January to spring, January data to spring update. I should get on that for you in a moment. Just say that first. Video today was our 6 AM UK weather forecast. I'm going to be live at 6 PM, so I'll be live streaming our 10 to 14 day. The GFS Ensembles watch. We're going to add some long range into the mix as well. Going to be an epic live stream, and that'll be coming up at 6 PM this evening. So if you're enjoying the content on the channel at the moment, please like, share, subscribe, and you show everybody for doing that. Thanks to Rich for amazing spring updates, Skip. Thanks so much, Rich. I love it. Love it. And thank you so much to our little bundles of fluff, Paul and Steffi. Our little loved up bundles. Bundles of fluff that we named on Wednesday's live stream. And it was very funny when Paul and Steph came out on top. So our fluffy replacements are Paul and Steffi. Who would have thought that? I don't know, do you? Well done to Best Crazy Boy as well for naming Paul and Steffi and for coming out on the name figure. How exciting was that? So I love it. No news about Fluffy this week. It's all gone quiet about. So if I hear anything, I'll let you know, but so far I think she's just keeping her head down on that farm in Iowa. That's what I've heard anyway, but you never know with Fluffy. She could pop up anywhere. Anytime, anywhere. Fluffy could be there. Anyway, thank you so much to Richard for that. Thank you so much to Shryan as well for sorting out all of the years for us. Thank you so much to Shryan Brown. Hashtag Team Gav. Doing an incredible job for us, as always. Right, here we go. So it's going to be a January to spring data special. No, January central temperature came out at 4.7, which was 0.9 of a degree above the 61 to 99 average, but it's about bang on average for the 91 to 2020 average, actually. So, very simply, we are looking at springs following January from a CT range of 4.3 to 5.1, placing January of 2024 at 4.7 there, nicely slap bang in the middle of the range. So, here we go then, starting off with our first spring, which is 1962. This is a cold spring with blocking around Greenland and in the North Atlantic. Trough of low pressure is covering much of northern and west Europe. Has a particularly cold and wintry March, one of the coldest Marches on record, and I think about the coldest March of the 20th century in 1962. The rest of the spring wasn't as cold as that, but generally a cool spring. 1962 was a very cold year, of course, preceding the daddy of cold winters. I'm so sorry, but we've got 1967. Gotcha, haven't we? We're talking about daddy. No, I'm so sorry. We've got a spring of 1967. So this one's quite an unsettled spring, but it's milder as well, with winds more in from off the Atlantic. So that's just a rather wet and mild spring. I think that one. Spring of 1968 also looks quite unsettled. This one, again, I think is relatively mild. They could have some early cold snaps, but again, just quite an unsettled spring there in 1968. We've got 1971, which has lower pressure to our south and higher pressure is out in the Atlantic. That's possibly a drier spring. And again, perhaps rather on the milder side as well, if anything. Then we've got 1973, this one with higher pressure out to the west and lower pressure to the east. So that spring maybe a few northerly snaps in that spring, so perhaps a slightly drier and cooler spring. That one. We've got 1981 next, following January City, range of 4.3 to 5.1. This is quite an interesting spring. This is a very unsettled spring, lots of low pressure in control, but note the high pressure up here, and so it has quite a cold and wet April, and particularly notable is the late April snowstorm that occurs late on in April 1981. The last weekend of the month, actually, I think it is, delivers a famous late April blizzard. And there's only two examples of that in the 20th century, 1981, 1908, when we have a snowstorm at the end of April, occurring so late in the year. So very notable and noteworthy spring in 1981. Spring 1995 is dry and often quite cool to start off with, but gets much warmer in May. So this one with a mid-Atlantic ridge and a trough of low pressure way to the northeast. Actually has some quite cold snaps in March of 1995. And the first week of the month does deliver some pretty widespread snow, actually. And then there's another cold snap in the middle of April of 1995. But also a lot of dry weather through April and especially into May. And by the time you get to May, the summer begins to reveal itself. Of course, it's a very hot summer in 1995, a proper drought summer. And that begins to show its hand in the first week of May 1995, where we have an unusually early hot and dry spell of weather. So a very interesting spring. Then we've got 1996. Now this is following a cold winter, so I'm not sure how seriously we can take this. When you have a cold winter, very often that pattern does carry on into the spring. This is a good example of that. So basically the pattern of the winter of 95-96 carries on into the spring of 1996. Therefore, it's a cold spring with low pressure to the south, high pressure to the north, and bring in those easterly winds a lot of the time. Very easterly spring. And, notably cold, has snow in both March and April of 1996. There's even a little bit of snow in the north in May 1996. And May 96 is one of the coldest springs of the 20th century as well. We have the spring of 1998. So this one also has a lot of colder weather, most focus on April, I should say, in 1998. So with the mid-Atlantic ridge going up to Greenland, trough low pressure east, and that brings the wind in from the north. So with that spring, has relatively mild but quite unsettled March, and then a really cold spell sets up in April 1998. Starts off with flooding rains. I'm sure you remember that if you live in central England, over the Easter of 1998, which is quite early in April. There's flooding rains, and then after that we go into a couple of weeks of really quite cold and wintry weather, regular snowfalls, even into low ground, and lots of night frost. But we do get rewarded by a very warm and dry May. Summer actually occurs in May of 1998, because the rest of the summer isn't up to much. Then we have 2000. It's another pretty cool spring, actually, with low pressure to our south. High pressure is out in the Atlantic. So quite mild in March, but again it has a cold April with some snow in the early part of April 2000. Very wet April as well, and then quite an unsettled May as well. Spring 2003, though, is the complete opposite. This is a warm and dry spring with high pressure away to our east. Low pressure is out to the west, often bringing up wind from the south. I've talked about this often, so the spring of 2003 really starts to reveal the pattern of the sun. It's a very, very long, hot, protracted summer. One of those years where like the summer pattern starts in the spring and it's still going into the autumn, even into September. And of course, a hottie spell is through the summer months, but nevertheless, has a lot of warm and dry weather through the spring of 2003. Then we've got the spring of 2006. This is quite a cold spring with low pressure to our east, high pressure out to our northwest. Winds often coming in from a northwesterly direction. So this has a number of cold snaps through March and April of 2006. it does have a slightly warmer May, but May 2006 is very wet as well, very wet and unsettled May. So overall, pretty dismal spring 2006. Then we got 2015, classic sort of high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north type spring, bringing in the wind from off the Atlantic a little bit like that, rather nondescript and forgettable spring. Now then we've got 2022, which has high pressure sitting away to our east, low pressure out to west, so lots of warm and dry weather in the spring of 2022. In some ways perhaps similar to 2003, in that the pattern of the summer perhaps reveals itself in the spring of 2020, or starts getting going anyway. Right, let's put all that together then. So this is how all March is combined looking, following a January CT of 4.3 to 5.1. Though higher pressure tends to be out to our west. Let's change the colour. Lower pressure tending to be away to the east. Probably a bit of cold snap potential in some of those Marches. Then we go through to all Aprils combined, perhaps more in way of cold snap potential than the Aprils. Again, we've got low pressure across much of northern and also western southern Europe. High pressure though is out in the Atlantic, and a lot of the time be bringing the wind from the north or northeast direction. So definite cold snap potential there, and looking quite unsettled too in the Aprils. But Mays look like this, and look away now if you want a warm and dry May. Low pressure just dominating the scene. No, very, very wet May potentially there. Not as cold, not much chilly potential as like March and April, but the May's looking really unsettled. And this is how all springs combined are looking, following a January CT range of 4.3 to 5.1. Overall, it's a very unsettled signal with low pressure across much of northern and also western Europe as well. So a proper unsettled spring is favoured there. Right, okay, so that's the CT package done. Let's move on though and have a look at England and Wales precipitation. So this is how January's England and Wales precipitation came out. For 2024, it came out with 97.2 millimetres, which was 103% of average, not too far from average then for rainfall. That's because it had a very wet start, it had quite a wet sort of end, but in between had a couple of weeks of pretty dry weather. Right, so let's do our second set of analogues. We're going to look at springs following January's with an England Wales precipitation range of 89 to 104 millimetres. That places, of course, being 97.2 millimetres from January 24, nicely in the middle. So the first spring this time is 1951. And again, we see a mid-Atlantic ridge going up towards Greenland, trough of low pressure to our south and east. Unsettled and cool spring there in 1951. Our next spring is going to be 1958. This is quite a cold start to the spring. Otherwise, a very unsettled spring, I think, in 1958. But it does have a really cold spell through particularly the first half of March of 1958. Very, very cold spell then after a relatively mild-ish winter. The spring of 1969 shows up next. So this one is a cold winter, of course, with high pressure to the north, low pressure to the south. Very easterly spring. This one, and I think it does get a little bit warmer as it goes along. Then we've got the spring of 1972, just looking very, very unsettled, lots of low pressure in from the Atlantic into western parts of Europe. We've got the spring of 1977 coming up next. This one quite unsettled spring too, with low pressure in across West Europe. I think that's quite a mild spring. I don't think there's much in the way of cold snaps during that spring. Quite a mild one. We've got the spring of 1979. This following the cold winter of 79, of course. Again, when you get a cold winter or a very cold winter, often the pattern will continue into the spring. This is another example of that, with blocking in the Atlantic up to Greenland, trough of low pressure across West Europe, dipping the jet stream. So lots of cold snaps through that spring. And, you know, even into May of 1979, there is some snowfalls going on. Spring of 1983 is also quite a cold spring, notably cold around Easter of 1983, but March and April both yielding cold weather, and then just a very, very wet May during 1983 there. We've got 1991. This is our first real anticyclonic spring that we've seen through both packages of analogues, I think. So this one's quite a warm and dry spring, or a mild dry spring, just with lots of high pressure in the ascendancy. So that's our first really sort of anticyclonic spring that we've had. Other than 2003, 2003 is showing up again. So that's interesting that 2003 shows up for both sets of analogues for January data. So yes, once again, you see that high pressure over to the east of us, low pressure is out to west, winds often coming up from the south, very southerly summer, very southerly spring, lots of warm, dry weather with that one. We've got spring 2007 showing up next, one in January January England weather precipitation range of 89 to 104 millimeters. Now, this analogue doesn't tell you all that much about the spring because it does have a very dry and warm March and April combination, exceptionally warm April, actually, until just 2011. It was the warmest April on record, exceptionally dry as well. But what you don't get from that is that we have a big flip in May of 2007. And the flooding rains of the summer of 2007 actually begins in May 2007. But nevertheless, a lot of dry and warm weather through March and April anyway of that year. We've got 2009 showing up next. This one has some high pressure to the south and some low pressure to the north. It's just generally quite a westerly sort of spring. So not a lot going on in that spring, really, often quite mild. We've got spring of 2011. This contains the warmest April on record, with high pressure dominating across much of Northern and West Europe, low pressures away to the northwest. So that's a warm spring, and particularly so in April 2011. It does begin to wobble a little bit in May, yielding a pretty poor summer. And then we've got 2013 with, again, blocking in the North Atlantic going up towards Greenland. Low pressure is across western parts of Europe. This, of course, containing the ferociously cold and snowy spell that we have during the second half of March 2013, and very cold into April 2013 as well. May 2013 is much drier, and although spring-like, is actually colder than average too. So a protracted cold spell during the spring of 2013. 2015 is showing up again, both sets of analogues with 2015, high pressure to the south, low pressure away to the north, and winds again coming in from the Atlantic, rather nondescript, but relatively mild spring. And then we've got finally 2023, last spring, with high pressure out to our west. And so this, again, this analogue doesn't tell you all that much about the spring. You look at it, probably think it's very dry spring. Actually has the wettest, March since 1981. It has a very, very wet March with some cold weather at the start of it and some snowfalls as well. And then things rapidly improve, though, as we go further on into the spring of 2023. Right, so let's pull all of that together then, and this is how all Marches combined are looking following an England weather precipitation range of 89 to 104 millimetres. So blocking signal around Greenland and low pressure underneath it. Probably an unsettled signal for these Marches more than anything, rather than being a cold signal, probably just a wet, unsettled signal for those Marches a lot of the time. That's how April is looking. So low pressure tends to be away to the north then in the Aprils, with high pressure ridging up from the southwest, possibly a drier signal for those Aprils, if anything. And then this is how May looks, and whether it's the CT or the England weather precipitation range, both sets, you know, favouring a very unsettled May, unfortunately, with lots of low pressure dominating, so a cool and wet May being favoured there with both sets of January data. And then finally, this is how all springs combined are looking following a January England and Wales precipitation range of 89 to 104 millimetres, and it's an unsettled signal for those springs. Particularly, I think this is being skewered by the Mays, but also the Marches have an unsettled signal as well. perhaps something a little bit drier into the Aprils, but overall low pressure in the ascendancy. Wow. Okay, that's the end of the 5th Spring 2024 update. Oops, let's put webcam back on. Okay. So if you enjoyed it, please you like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much, everyone, for doing that. I've got one more spring update to bring you next week, and then we're into our winter forecast a week after that. So we're at the business end of spring updates now. And yeah, so it won't be long till we reveal all with our spring forecast. Thanks to Richard for our amazing spring updates. Yeah, and of course there's Paul and Steffi as well, little bundles of fluff. And thanks to Shryan, also hashtag Shryan Broom. That's absolutely lovely. Thank you so much. What am I talking about? Hashtag Team Gab with Rich and Shryan. Brilliant. I don't know what I'm saying, but thanks to Richard and Shryan and hashtag Team Gab as well. And that's it, then. So, well, anyway, if you've got any questions about this spring update, then please fire away on our live stream. We're going to be live at 6 p.m. We'll have a discussion about this. Maybe, you know, if you've got any questions, we'll do the 10 to 14 day. We'll do Ensembles Watch. Have a look at some long range. It's all to come at 6 p.m. I shall see you a little bit later on for that one. But for the 5th Spring 2024 update for GavsWeatherVids, that's all for now. And thanks for watching.